super excited to share with you my distance running backpack. I kind of first got into distance running after hiking the Santiago de Compostela, which is a traditional pilgrimage from one side of Spain to the other, 500 miles from Saint Jean to Santiago de Compostela. And there was a lot that happened in between, a lot of amazing stories. And in my backpack, the one I carried with me is a hiking backpack. There are a lot of things that, looking back, I might have done without that were just unnecessary, or you learn along the way. And but one of the things that a takeaway point for me afterwards was maybe the last 10 days or so was like, oh, if I were to do this again, I would love to run. Because at that point, your legs are actually getting super strong, able to handle the 20 some miles a day. But if I were to do it differently, I think this is what it might look like. So this past spring, I got to do a long distance run. I did a 2-day, and the first day I covered about 34 miles, and the second about 28 or so. And in between, I actually spent the night out in the elements. So in order to survive that, first of all, this is just a simple windbreaker. So for your cold mornings, this is great to kind of shield you from just a little bit of the moisture, but then also to keep you warm, kind of break the wind, obviously. But this over here is so cool. This is called a Salomon running backpack. Now these Salomons are super light. You can measure their weight in grams. And then inside, they pack a good amount. But the main difference between something like this and a hiking backpack is that it sits up on top of your shoulders. So whereas a hiking backpack like the one I had, also super light, had a waist belt, this one sits on top, and so it doesn't restrict the motion of your torso, which is great for running. It's like it's not even there, honestly, and you can carry a good amount of weight. In the front here, you can actually carry your water flasks as well, and so you fill up at the gas stations or whatever restrooms you find along the way. And so you kind of slap them in front, and once you drink from them, they kind of fold down to nothing, and then it's nearly invisible, and you can carry one on each side. Now, as far as staying over a night, when you're hiking the Camino de Santiago, you're staying at hostels along the way. And so nothing but a fleece sleeping bag was really necessary, besides a few nights that we spent in the elements as well. A real sleeping bag would have been really helpful then, and then something else to keep you warm. But at that point, just didn't have the knowledge to pull that off successfully. But what I have in here is a real sleeping bag in a nice little compression sack. And this one actually has a down. Yeah, it's like your typical compressed sleeping bag. It's got down insulation. I think it's rated at 40 degrees or so. This one packs really small. I got this little compression sack separately. But then this was actually the amazing find for me. This was a game changer. This is called a bivy sack. And so inside here, if you open this up, it's almost like an additional sleeping bag, but it's like a sleeping bag liner. And so if you're tucked inside your sleeping bag, just imagine yourself like that, but then line yourself in this one as well. And this one will completely surround you, and it actually has like a zip tie so that you're completely enclosed in this little shell. And this is waterproof, but also has thermal properties. And so this keeps you warm even more. So this almost acts like a tent. So if you don't have room to store a tent, like in this case, I didn't want to store a tent. This pretty much is a tent. And it'll keep you warm, it'll keep you dry, it'll totally enclose you if there's a rain going or if there's some condensation. And yet, even with these properties, you can still breathe without suffocating if you're completely enclosed. This is an amazing find. And I like this thing a lot. Packs really small. There are a couple other things in here. Like a pooper scooper, super necessary. I just thought, hey, might as well go green while you're out here, along with some toilet paper. Do things right and bury it deep. This one is my 100 proof sunscreen. You know, if it's hot out there, which it was, you get baked. And so you don't want to though you're gonna turn brown, you don't wanna look like a lobster. Toothbrush, obviously. Credit card is nice because then you're not dealing with jingling change with every step that you take, because that'd be ridiculous. And then, but this is actually worth its weight in gold, speaking of money. This is Himalayan pink salt. Now, I think there was a time in Europe where this was actually worth its weight nearly in gold, because I remember going to the salt mines in Poland where they would mine a pink salt. And but this one's from the Himalayas, and along your run, you know, you can kind of lick your finger and then, you know, kind of get a couple grains in your system. And that's really great if you do that every 2 or 3 miles on the run or so, just to have some salt in your system, because otherwise you're going to be cramping up, and if it's hot out, you're going to be losing a lot of salt, and you really need to stay on top of that to make sure you have it in your system. For these long distance types of running, I guess nutrition or just the food you take is really important. When I did this one the first day, I stopped I was looking for a grocery store or a gas station, either or. But the first place that I found was actually this interesting little Spanish store. So it really reminded me of the Camino, actually, in Spain. They had all the different types of specialized bread, actually even specialized fruits. I actually bought a tomato and it just downed it like an apple, and it was so tasty. But carbohydrates are important for your system when you're doing these long types of distances. Before an event like this or a distance like this, when you're covering it and you're just training for it, you want to be doing something like a keto diet where you're staying completely away from carbohydrates. You're learning to burn fat and to fuel your body on this, and your mind to run on not on sugars, but just on, you know, the calories burned from fat. That's something that is definitely worth practicing. But when you're actually running along the distance race that you've been training for, you want to be taking the carbohydrates. So when I ran my Ironman, actually pizza was my secret weapon. This past one, it was the Peasant Man. So the bike was actually 4 miles longer than an Ironman. But I had Pizza Hut pizza along the bike, and during the 4 loops, I think I had about 8 slices or so. And then towards the end of the run, I don't think I would have finished as strong if I hadn't eaten the pizza that they provided along the way, or bagels that they provided along the way. You know, these types of just carbohydrates. It's really tasty. Honestly, one thing I've come to love, actually, maybe this sounds bad, but I just love at the gas stations that greasy pizza that's just been turning for hours and hours. And you know, your body tells you what you need actually when you're doing strenuous exercise like that. And your body needs that grease to burn, and it needs that carbohydrate or that pizza to burn too. So just learn to embrace it. And honestly, nothing tastes better than one that's been, you know, sitting on that grill for like all day. Anyway, that's pretty much everything that's in my backpack. In this particular one, you can fit a little bit more, but learning to run without too much is, I think, really cool. You know, I think polyester type of clothes is really nice. When I hiked the Camino de Compostela, one thing I learned, a takeaway point for me, was never to wear cotton, because on a hot day, you're going to be sweating and you're going to be miserable. On a cold day, with all of your layers, you're going to sweat a little bit and then be cold. But with polyester, it'll keep you cool or it'll keep you warm. And just layer up your base layers like that, depending on what you need. But I hope this was helpful. I don't know if this is something you would ever get into, honestly, I wonder why I got into it myself. One of the reasons I love running is honestly, that's when I think I pray best. I begin actually with the Fatima prayer. So I just I begin everything up with an offering, for the love of Jesus, for the reparation for the sins committed against the Immaculate Heart of Mary, the conversion of sinners, and as Saint Jacinta would often add, for the Holy Father. And then obviously everything in between is a prayer, whether it's everything you see, not just the sufferings, but also the beauties that you kind of encounter along the way, the different people that you meet, or the different natural beauty or even city beauty that you see along the way. And then at the end, to give God all the glory, there's something to be said for that. I think that is so incredible, learning to give everything that we experience, the mental endurance that is necessary for this type of running, or just the physical exhaustion, or just the moments of peace along the way when you actually take a break, or you sit along the side of some body of water, and just to get to enjoy the waves or the stillness or the birds or whatever it is. There's so much beauty there, and honestly I think that's when I pray the best, when you're so far from everything else in your life. No one knows where you are and it's just you and God is the one taking care of you out there. I can't help but think I think Jesus says in the Gospel of Luke, in the kingdom passages, he says, if God will care so much for even the sparrows, how much more will he care for you? And I had a moment like that. The last time I did that was when I didn't necessarily know where I would stay for the night. I was crossing over one of the bridges, and inside the crack, I just heard a little purr. And then I looked inside the crack, and there was actually a little kitten there. And I was like, oh, if God can find a safe place for you, and he'll be able to take care of me too. And I just looked at it for a little while, and it looked back at me. And I mean, it was such a simple but beautiful little moment of a realization of God's just care that he has for me. And there's so many different experiences like that, even people along the way that you encounter. There was this one guy where honestly, if I didn't have my Preach Christ shirt on, I don't know if he would have been necessarily a safe person to be around. But I encountered him, and then somehow, one way or another, the conversation ended up going into, well, I'm actually a Bible reading person. It wasn't me saying this, it was him saying this. And then I was like, wow, that's an amazing thing. And we ended up having this incredible conversation. I don't remember his name at the moment, but I still have a picture. But ended up taking a selfie with him, and we parted ways. And it was just encounters like that you don't expect, but you would only find by stepping out the door. But I hope you enjoyed this video. Don't forget to subscribe and give your humanity completely to the Lord.